Hey everyone, I am going to try something a little bit different today on the channel, but I think it will serve us really well in the future for analyzing some poker situations. And we're going to shift our focus a little bit today to talk a little bit more about draw games, and specifically draw games on the river. Recently, a very smart programmer who's part of the poker community named Ian Chan has been posting some private solver work that he's been doing for draw games on his Twitter account, and even more recently than that, he joined a podcaster and content guy named Derek Kwan to discuss his Deuce-to-Seven Triple Draw solver information. And so I've got some screenshots you'll see in the video today that are coming from that YouTube video, which I will link in the description of this video to give full credit to those guys for their smart work. But I wanted to show today that you can duplicate and get a lot of the same information that someone might have to go through a completely customized private draw game solver to get through publicly available tools for the river. And that's using PioSolver, which I have done for all the limit hold'em videos that we've previously looked at. And today we are going to use as an approximation for a river situation in Deuce-to-Seven Triple Draw. So in order to really use this for our channel in the future and to be able to show some interesting theory about draw games, I wanted to introduce the method today and explain a little bit about how it works. So what you see is I have a limit hold'em river situation in Pio, and we're using a board, a very simple board of 2, 2, 2, 3, 4. And these are the ranges for both players. OOP and IP have the same range. This is approximating a 1-1 river situation in triple draw game where both players have approximately the same range, 50-50 equity. You can see here, and I've made a conversion chart over here on the right for an approximation of this situation. It works out that we have 45 limit hold'em combinations on this board, and we need approximately 48 combinations to represent all of the possible catches that someone could make on the river in a draw game. That's the 9 unpaired cards, four different rank suits of those, which is 36, and then 12 pairs, of which there's 3 combos each. So that's four pairs of which there are 3 combos each for 12 more combinations. So that gives us a total of 48 combos, and we're approximating that with 45 limit hold'em combinations. And you can see the conversion here on the right. So how does this actually work? Well, let's take a look at the sim that I made today, duplicating the method from Ian Chan that I have his screenshots here at the bottom, so we can do a little compare and contrast to see if this makes any sense. You can see that he, here in the bottom left, created a custom game for the river Deuce-to-Seven 1-1 spot using a pot size of 5.25 big bets. And he got the EVs of each player's using his solver, 2.54, almost 2.55 for the out-of-position player and 2.7 for the in-position player. Well, let's take a look in Pio and see how we did. EV of OOP player, 254, which is 2.54. I'm using a $100 big bet in a $525 pot. IP 270. So we can see that these are approximately equal, maybe a slight deviation, but basically the same. What about strategically? For the out-of-position player, he has 39% bet, and we can look at the shape of the river betting, which means how the hands fare as you go from best to worst in his solver, versus how we can look at the strategy for the OOP player here in my PioSolver version of this. Again, we have the conversion over here on the right, and we can again see that these match up very, very well. He had 39% bet. Pio wants to bet 40% of the time. And if we look at the shape, notice that there is a mix of all of the very, very good hands. And we are seeing the same thing here. Notice that the best hand in my solve is 6-5 because that is the nuts on 2, 2, 2, 3, 4 since we're not allowing any pocket pairs. The best straight, and then the second nuts is Ace-5. So Pio is wanting to basically bet with the nuts and check more with like the second nuts, whereas we could see a little bit more of a pure mix in Ian Chan's private solver here. But nevertheless, we see some pretty significant similarities here. We're seeing mixing from all of the good hands in our combinations here, which are going down from the ace, after ace 5, we're going down from ace king, ace queen, 1 to bet. And these are some blocker effects that are not always going to be exactly perfect. So I'm not saying that this is exactly right, but this can give us a lot of information about the way our strategy should basically look, and particularly with the frequencies that we should bet and how those are going to look. And then we can look at one final thing, which is facing a river bet. And here we will see facing a river bet. And in Ian Chan's private solver, his solve wants to raise 23%. We have raised 23.7. Call 60. We have call 58. Fold 16.5. We have fold 18. So again, very, very similar EVs. And very, very similar strategy. If you look at the shape of the strategy here, we see pure raises from all the very good hands, which makes sense in position. You're not going to do any mixing with your very good hands. We have pure raises from our very, very good hands, all the way down to the ace-6 offsuit combination, which represents in Deuce-to-Seven land. The ace-6 offsuit represents approximately a 9-5 or a 7 perfect in ace-to-5 if you're using that game. And then we can see, oops, excuse me, I went to the previous chart, previous screenshot, and then we can see calling from all the middle region, and then some folding and some bluff raising from the weakest hands. And again, Pio is emulating this very well, with the folding coming from the weakest hands and some bluff raises coming from these in-between combinations that are 0 EV, mixing calls, raises, and folds. So we can see that our methodology here is going to approximate a private solver very, very well. These tools are available. You can create this for yourself pretty easily if you have a Pio license. And we can just use this for some future analysis of some river draw game situations, particularly suited for games like this, where it's like a 1-1 situation. We have a 5.25 big bet pot, 525, and equal ranges for both players, and it just gives us a good idea of the strategy. One area where he did not show his solver strategy in the video that I watched was for the in-position player facing a check, which I'll take a look at here. And here we can see a much more simple strategy, which is also, again, very consistent. And when you're in position, there's no more reason to be tricky and mixing with your good hands. I remember the out-of-position guy is mixing check raises, right? So he's checking some good hands to induce raises, so to induce bets, to induce bluffs. So check, bet. We have all these hands that are mixing and throwing in raises. But the in-position player has a very different scenario. He's just betting all his good hands for value. And here we see a very polarized strategy, which is exactly what you're always going to see in limit hold'em on the river in position. Value betting down all the way to about the Queen-6 combo in hold'em, the Queen-5 combo in hold'em, which we look over at our little handy-dandy conversion chart, and we can see is approximately down to a very good queen in Deuce-to-Seven Triple Draw, or down to a 10 in Ace-to-5. So one area where people typically make mistakes in Deuce-to-Seven Triple Draw on the river in 1-1 is not going for thin enough value in position. And yeah, we can see that the EV difference between bet and check for some of these combos is quite low, but as soon as you get up to even something as strong as like the Queen-9 offsuit hold'em combination, it has a difference in EV of 6% of a big bet. So, it is a pretty significant mistake to check a hand, which would be approximately, again, still in that Queen region, maybe a Jack region in the Deuce-to-Seven Triple Draw situation. And then obviously we're bluffing our very weakest hands here. So a very polarized strategy, a very simple strategy for the in-position player. And then obviously we already saw the out-of-position player did throw in some checks with his slow plays, has a number of hands that call, and obviously folding some of his weakest hands that chose not to bluff in the first place. So, we can go through this in more detail at any time. We can make up some other situations that are similar, but I more wanted to introduce the idea and show that this is going to work just as well for river situations as a private tool that people are trying to develop that maybe, is not available to you to study from. So this is something I've worked with for a while as an approximation of draw game stuff on the river, and it's been very beneficial for me to understand the general picture of the strategy, what we're trying to accomplish with the various parts of our range, the frequencies that we would choose, and then we can go into some future videos. We can go into some node locking to see mistakes that people are making and how to best take advantage of those as well. So let me know what questions you have about this. I understand that it's a little complicated because you have to look at these hold'em combinations, kind of go over here, mentally convert them to the equivalent Deuce-to-Seven or Ace-to-5 hand combination, but I don't think it takes too much getting used to. The hands are fairly linear other than the 6-5 and the Ace-5 being the nuts and the second nuts. After that, you literally just go straight down, Ace highs, King highs, Queen highs, Jack highs, 10 highs, 9 highs. All the way down to the very weakest hands, which are 8 highs and 7, 6, and 7, 5 offsuit, which are your nut lows. So this can be a very helpful method for studying river situations in a draw game. And yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what questions you have. I'll be happy to discuss in more detail or try to pull up some simulations of similar types of situations that we might be curious about for the river in these very commonly played games. I'm very happy to be able to finally show you guys some stuff that's a little bit outside of the limit hold'em realm, as I do play all the mixed games and I want to talk to you guys about some of the other things. So hit me up on the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know if this makes sense, and I will talk to you all in the comments. And again, thanks to Derek Kwan and Ian Chan for their work on their own channels and in their own time, as it gives me some inspiration to talk to you guys about some draw games today. Talk to you all soon.